we have how many? Little more than 3 of the paramitas left from last year, right? We left at Fortitude. Not at Bodhicitta, we were close to finishing it. But I thought of doing a little recap, particularly dealing with Bodhicitta. Right? It's always, we can't have enough of Bodhicitta at this point, at least for me. So I think it'd be good to have yet another round of Bodhicitta. And yes, again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity for me to come and get this spiritual vacation. Yeah, it is like a vacation. Like I felt, as soon as I landed here, I felt relief. Until the very last hour, I was just pushing through a project and got it over and rushed through here. And then felt so relaxed. So thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity for spiritual sojourn. So yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. And another thing is we'll try to make the sessions as meaningful as possible by being informal as well as being open. Okay, so like last year, this time also we're going to primarily dwell on the topic of bodhisattvas practice and paramitas. I say paramitas, that kind of encompasses the entirety of bodhisattvas practices, but so we'll be primarily focusing on that and around that, but at the same time in our discussions and also in the middle of the presentation, in the middle of the deliberation, if anyone feels like they have something to ask, that they feel comfortable doing so, and also with the confidence that might help others as well, then please feel free to intervene to bring that topic up. So, I say bringing a touch of richness and sophistication in our own daily opportunities of engaging in them. We may have aspirations to practice in the ideals of bodhisattvas, but if we could take time in exploring a little deeper into it, then that can definitely help in bringing richness, integrity, sophistication, flexibility, all of those. So it is with those hopes that despite the fact that bodhisattva practice is still a long shot for me, but still the purpose of anticipating that and bringing it up front, discussing is to kind of make the most of it, even while one is that far off from actually actualizing it. And then, in the meantime, kind of make the most of it in bringing our own practices little more complete, more sophisticated, more all-rounded. So with this, I care to touch on this topic. Yes, second one. Yes, bodhisattva practice cannot happen without bodhicitta in the central of it. The bodhisattva practices kind of circle around bodhicitta. It's on the basis of bodhicitta, then we can speak of whether one can do the Bodhisattva practices, when one does, with what integrity. And it is considered the jewel of the mind. There can be so many different minds, so there can be so many different aspirations, expressions of mental expressions of courage, fortitude, letting go, caring for others, whatnot. But among them, Bodhicitta stands out as the only jewel among them. It marks an extraordinary milestone in one's journey of self-development. It doesn't. What do you call? It doesn't. Get off the track of self-development, but it marks an extraordinary milestone, extraordinary richness, extraordinary sensibility to the journey. Along with this achievement, one not only is confined to mere self-development, but bringing hope, joy, prospect to everyone else, without exception, everyone else. This is that wonderful. It doesn't leave out even a single sentient being. So long as something or some being, someone is aspiring to be happy and aspiring to free from suffering, bodhisattvas are connected with them. And when one becomes fully awakened, Buddhas, they are even more, not only connected, but even fully equipped in eking out purpose, in eking out achievement. So it's in those respects that Bodhicitta is the jewel of the minds. It stands at the very center core of a marvelous flourishing of a being. Next, please. Yeah, along those lines, Shantideva, a great practitioner of Bodhisattva's way of life, an exemplary practitioner, deep to the core of his being. It's almost like he had no other things to think about than bodhicitta and in a way that's not limiting, right? That includes everything. Yet that's the focus of his whole life. Even while he was sleeping, lying, whatnot, that's all he had. And then from that you can see how such an endeavor, such an enterprise endeavor is very fruitful. Look at his works not too many, but whatever he produced, they sparkle among the gems. They are still, in the Tibetan context, we say, Semjeng Dönjeba. Those works are still strong and vibrant in the service of others, even to this day. And those are all the result, the result of this immersion into the welfare of others. That too, combined with this smart choice, not mistaken, but a smart choice of choosing to attain full awakening towards that end in a way that is the most ultimate choice what will come of it, but at the same time doesn't leave out all the other means of reaching out. So he marvels at himself in having one day woken up and seeing bodhicitta within himself. Wow, this intention, the benefit of all others, which does not arise in others, even for their own sake, is an extraordinary jewel of the mind, and its birth is an unprecedented wonder. Unprecedented and very rare, right? As as serious as we may be. Actually, sometimes it doesn't look like we're as serious in really promoting our own well-being and welfare. Looking at what we actually do, looking at what we actually do, be that to our body, to our mind, to our fellow beings, whatnot. It doesn't seem like that's at the core of your mind, your well-being, your welfare. But deep down, we do have that. But even as serious as we may be, just always being so obsessed with one's own well-being, the intention to benefit others to that end, even if that be to that end, is so difficult to arise. When it comes about with no intention whatsoever for individual personal benefit, that's even more marvelous. So that's how this what you call utterance comes about. The intention to benefit all beings, which does not arise in others, even for their own sake, even if they were to pursue their own sake, and then they somehow connect the dots and saying, "Oh, it's by pursuing others that I can benefit," but they can't get that done. So there is this bodhisattva who gets there, but with not the slightest tinge of any vested interest behind it. And this definitely is a marvel. So that's what this says, which doesn't arise in others, even for their own sake. Even if this were to be for their own sake, and they somehow are connected or saying that there is some link, they can't get over the problems, the obstacles, and can't get their strength of fortitude pulled up to get there. Whereas there is someone who gets there with not the slightest tinge of any vested interest attached to it. This definitely is an unprecedented wonder. Unprecedented in the sense that not many get there. And for one's own situation, this is like one has hit it for the first and only time. So for one's own, one has been, from a Buddhist perspective, one has been around for continuous time, for immemorial time, but have even not come close to this. We may have done so many things. From the Buddhist perspective, we say, oh, we may have been Brahma, we may have been Indra, we may have been all that. There's almost nothing that we can identify and say, oh, I haven't been there. When it comes to the mundane things, like we have explored everything. But when it comes to bodhicitta and the direct understanding of emptiness, cultivation of great compassion, crystallizing into bodhicitta, whatnot, those are something that we haven't come across in our lifetime. In our case, in individual cases, it's like an unprecedented thing. How in the world could you have missed it when you have been around for countless times? That's sheer negligence and sheer distraction. And we can see from our own life, right, in this very lifetime, not everyone is lucky in really making a good decision. Despite having explored everything, despite like they have almost everything to their access, but somehow, be that someone in the power, someone in wealth, whatnot, they may have gotten to that pinnacle of their achievement, length-wise, breadth-wise, whatnot, but not. But sensibility, particularly sensibility crystallizing into this kind of a cultivation, doesn't seem to be that easy to get to. Somehow the more one rises up the ladder of whatever mundane achievement, one seems to get more and more muddled, more and more lost, right? And in the course of doing that, seems to kind of become more and more further from what one would have really, really, really liked to use one's life for, and bring suffering to others and whatnot, right? So, given those situations, this indeed is an unprecedented thing in one's being around for countless eons. So that's what he's saying. He's not necessarily saying unprecedented in that nobody has ever achieved it, but in one's own case, not that many achieve it, but in one's own case, this is like the first ever in this endless rounds of cyclic existence. In this countless rounds of sickening existence. Okay, then next. Yeah, so once again, he kind of, but Shantideva can't help but marvel in what he has just done. Just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of rubbish. Likewise, by some coincidence, looking at how many conditions should come in place in getting this right, that would almost seem like a coincidence. Like, who in the world could have figured all of those conditions deliberately, intentionally, and then pursued them? Right? So given that being the case in really cultivating bodhicitta, when one has generated it, it's almost like by sheer coincidence, particularly given one's own subject, one's own condition of being so effortfully, deliberately, intentionally, and then, of course, at the same time, confusedly, unawares, running after the afflictions and whatnot, blinded by the ignorance, by the confusion, and all around. When one deals with one's situation, one deals with it under the force of afflictions. So it's like the afflictions, the negativities, are the first and foremost force within us. So on the one hand, we lack the wisdom to see things the way they are, and see things in a sensible way, and also understand the causations correctly, be that causations leading to suffering, causations leading to happiness, not just going after the general, general declaration, general understanding, customs, but really rooted in one's own awakening. So one lacks that kind of a wisdom. So in a way, that's like being a blind person. And then discovering a jewel in the heap of rubbish. It is not talking of a heap of rubbish somewhere else. Within ourselves, we are a heap of rubbish unless we clear it up. I definitely am. So it's in the midst of that heap of rubbish within us that we could find this sparkling jewel of bodhicitta, right? So heap of rubbish where this could be hidden in so many ways. There could be kind of not even sensed in so many ways, given the heap of rubbish that we have be that in terms of our own instincts, our own tendencies, to use Bob Thurman's translation for Bhakti, tendencies, instincts, latencies, and on top of that, very strongly developed, full force developed manifest afflictions. It's like a heap of rubbish within us. And within that, when one sees a spark of bodhicitta-like mindset coming up, that's like really discovering a jewel, just a single small jewel in the heap of rubbish. And that too, finding it almost by coincidence, given the condition that we are in, blinded by our own ignorance. And so in that respect, even making a slight sense of bodhicitta, like developing an aspiration, kind of appreciation of that, and having some sense of what that is like, it's like letting the mind come out of that heap of rubbish and kind of shake it off itself a little bit, and then kind of form a bodhicitta-like mindset, like, if I could achieve that. And then come back, drop down into the rubbish once again. So in that respect, it's like definitely a remarkable thing. Just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of rubbish, likewise, by some coincidence, an awakening mind has been born within me. What would be the natural expression? Hooray! Or what else? Wow! Like that. Wow! What else? What? Yeehaw! Yes. Like yeehaw. Yeah, eureka. Yes. Yeehaw! Indeed, because when you develop that kind of aspiration, that's like really shaking off all of those constraints that we build in through our own self-obsession. If one is pursuing a project, if in the middle of that one begins to think, oh, poor me, I get to do this, what, etc., etc. If there is a slight kind of a concern driven by self-obsession or not, one begins to feel the pinch. And we have so many of them. It's like we're bound by our own self-imposed imprisonment. In the name of love. So we are saying that I'm loving myself. So in that case, I better do this. Be really concerned about me. Be really protective. Be really mean to others. All of this, right? So that I could be protected. But what we end up becoming is imprisoned. And then when we have this spark of bodhicitta, like mother sentient being, fellow sentient beings, in the same boat as we are, what not? And then out of that you generate a sense of benefiting, genuinely benefiting, reaching out to others. It's like all of a sudden you have shattered all those constraints. Like, yeehaw! Definitely, one would definitely feel that. So there is this definite need of self-love in the genuine sense. What we do in the name of self-love do not count to that, do not amount to that. We need to do a rethinking. We don't love our body, given what we do with it. We do not give it enough sleep. We think like we have more important thing to do. And despite the body revolving, right, rebelling, saying, come on, give me the break. You said, shut up. This is more important to do, right? And so is this case with how we think, what we cultivate as an attitude, kind of, etc., etc. That's like That's like violating our mind of its freedom, of its birthright freedom. And we do this all in the name of self-love. So there's this definite need of rethinking what is self-love, self-care. And we all have the potential to generate this. And when we do this, that's really amazing what it can lead us to. Yes, next, please. Yeah, so we have talked about bodhicitta, but there's this need of really nailing down what it exactly is. Because in Dharma centers, not here, not here, definitely not. But in the Dharma centers that I've been in, of course, people come and go. They just show up for a few sessions, whatnot, and they hear bodhicitta being kind of really repeated and whatnot, and then they kind of have some sense that bodhicitta must be a good guy, or must be something good. And when you ask them, what is bodhicitta? Oh, it is compassion, it is love, it is generosity, like that. Of course, it is a what do you call, close shot, but not nailing it down. So good that I have this technology here, this device here. I can now cheat. Cheat like I know everything, whereas what I'm doing is I'm just looking here at my notes. Yeah. So, bodhicitta by definition is for the sake of others wishing to attain complete, perfect enlightenment. We could have said bodhicitta is wishing to attain a complete, perfect enlightenment for the sake of others, with purpose. I say, for the sake of others first. And that's exactly how it is said in Maitreya's text itself, even in the Tibetan. Semjepani, he stops there. Bodhicitta is Shendun Chir, for the sake of others. Semjepani Shendun Yangda Zobe Changchude. Yeah, and there's a significance, there's a purpose, there's a reason for that. It is other-oriented. It has nothing to do with what one gets from this. Usually we always calculate like this, right? What do I get from this? What do I get from this? Right? And that's clear indication of how we let ourselves be driven by self-interest. Nothing wrong with pursuing self-interest, except we need to do it smartly, wisely. Even if that takes the form of letting go of self-interest. I mean, in life there are so many paradoxes, right? This might be one of them. Like in the name of pursuing self-interest, we would do much better if we do that by pursuing nothing but others' welfare. Pursue others' welfare. And there's this need of really getting smart on this and understanding, what does that look like? Does it look like completely not taking care of myself, letting myself completely down to the extent of getting into whatever? That doesn't make sense at all, right? How would you pursue the well-being of others if you are not upright, if you are not capable? Except if you could pursue the same thing, you could achieve the same thing by genuinely thinking of others. And that means everything you do, you get to do, but with that sense of freedom. And if we talk from spiritual point of view, that's like accumulating merit along the way. Huge, extensive marriage along the way. Because all you're doing, whatever teeny tiny things it may be, it's touched with this spark of bodhicitta. So it puts into perspective what bodhicitta is for the sake of others. You could choose so many things for the sake of others, but here it is choosing to attain full awakening for the sake of others. And that means that doesn't leave out any of the other means by which you could help, but you are not kind of falling short of reaching for the highest. And yes, and such a aspiration, such a mindset could, depending on one's own situation, environment, one's own upbringing in this life and upbringing through lives could latch onto it. So in so many different ways, in so many different ways, by pure aspiration, by pure faith, aspiration, or grounded in more practical understanding of the foundations, in the possibility of achieving, in the possibility of realizing its aims, etc., etc. So, looking at where one lies, one should do the groundwork. One should attend to the groundwork in making such an aspiration kind of grow within oneself and become stronger and stronger and stronger, well grounded, to the point that that then becomes completely one with who you are, and thus be able to walk around with confidence, with no sense of threat or risk in ever losing it. Then the prospect ahead is very bright. Yeah, there's a significance. It is significant that for the sake of others comes first in the definition, as it reminds us where to place the focus of our attention. Yeah, the praises of Bodhicitta. We need to hear praises of Bodhicitta, not faked ones, but real ones. But we need to. Right? This is not an advertisement. Based on wrong statistics, not like that. It's a supreme nectar. In the Eastern philosophy, in the Eastern traditions, we associate nectar with immortality. Immortality, right? Yeah, speaking of this, from a Buddhist perspective, we do speak of a state of being of Buddhahood, right? Which is free from which has overcome the four maras. Yeah, that's much better way of calling it. Otherwise, if one tries to convey it in actual English, the available ones are not that good. So, among the of the four maras that a fully awakened being overcomes, one is to do with immortality, of which we speak of two levels. One is gross immortality, and the other one is more subtle. The gross one is immortality in the sense of achieving such a immortality in the sense that one could achieve a state of not being subject anymore to death dictated by one's karma and afflictions. That's the kind of death that we usually. That's the kind of death we usually die. Is that the expression you say that? That's the kind of death that we actually die. Yeah, the kind of death that we die. I think that's an expression, right? Is it? Okay. Anyway, that's a kind of. Pardon?
It works.
It works. Okay. Yeah. So. That's the kind of death that we see around. Kind of people dying, either an untimely death. What would be the other one? Timely death? That's very strange, right? Untimely death is when you still have some energies to go, but somehow you couldn't last up to that. Some other situations come in the meantime, and you are cut short. That's called untimely death. But when you would have gone the longest that you could, what you call thrown by the karmic vision, and then you could hit that, what would you call it? By default, if the other one is called untimely, this will be timely. he died a timely death. That would be awful. What do you call it? Awful. Pardon? Yeah, awful, morbid, awful. What is the expression? Obituary. That would be an awful obituary to be heard saying, by the way, he died a timely death. But anyway, in the Buddhist perspective, we say our birth and our death and the situation around are all driven by karma, not in the sense of being predetermined and have nothing to do whatsoever, but provided you don't do anything and you do not come across the favorable conditions, that's bound to happen. But in the meantime, that's still amenable to change. Yeah, even in the case of, maybe not in the case of the so-called timely death. So that's when the karmic vision, the force that went into really throwing that arrow, has been uninterrupted in the meantime, and the time comes when that force finishes. Then there's no choice but for the arrow to come down. So that's what we're talking about from a Buddhist perspective. One could hit that, but then couldn't go more. But in both of these cases, it is karmic driven, or it has so much dependency on the afflictions and the actions accumulated through that. But then we speak of, not that I have very clear idea of this, we call that samji michape chiwa. What would that be? Samji michapa means not unimaginable. Literally translating, it means samji michapa, unthinkable, unimaginable, incomprehensible, or maybe incomprehensible is more incomprehensible in the eyes of limited knowledge, maybe, but nonetheless subject to being dead, though not so grossly due to the afflictions and the actions induced by. So such people can be able to live much longer, but nonetheless still end up dying. And those are called samji michape chiwa, which is more close to being translated as incomprehensible. Incomprehensible in the eyes of the mundane knowledge, whatnot. So from a Buddhist perspective, one could still find that even that kind of a situation would be considered some kind of a limitation, some kind of a constraint. And the Buddha state is free from both of those types of death maras. So how do we make sense of that? Earlier I was sharing, not that I know much of physics, but I was sharing something that I came across recently, something that I've heard, but have not really seen an actual text conveying that. And that came in a roundabout way when I was checking a Tibetan translation of that section. I said, well, I read it. I said, what? Am I seeing it right? I better check it with the English. And I checked it with the English. It is. That has to do with the concept of conservation of charge. Yeah, charge. Yeah, positive, negative charge, conservation of charge, where it says the charge is never created anew, nor is it damaged. It's only transferred, passed on. Yeah, it's never destroyed, nor is it never newly created. It's always there, and it's only transferred. Wow! Physics accepts that. and it equates it with something similar to that is the more often heard statement of energy being constant, right? Constant, not same thing, not newly created, never destroyed, but always around in different forms. So, from a Buddhist perspective, we have something similar to that, but not necessarily doing with matter, but more with, should I say, trickily, should I say, energy, subtle mind, clear light mind, which is similar to being energy. so it seems like when you say it is not newly created nor damaged at that level, it's almost like it's always around. It's always around. Except when we have to get things done, we can't rely just on that. We have to, on that basis, we have to create what you call coarser, grosser things to get things done for us, right? But these grosser ones are subject to being newly created and also damaged, but not at its very subtle building blocks. So from a Buddhist perspective, the state of Buddhahood is a state of being fully functional, operational, not at the gross level, but at that building block level of subtle, clear light mind, which has no death, no birth. Conservation of clear light mind. So there's a new physics topics, right? Conservation of clear light mind. So it's on that basis we speak of Bodhicitta being a supreme nectar in the sense of what it is capable of leading to, as well as even before culminating in the resultant state of full awakening, whatnot. Even in the meantime, when one has the bodhicitta, it's almost like there is no death. There is no death, or there is no what do you call, no giving into. There is no giving into sorrows when you have bodhicitta, even if it has not yet culminated into a full awakening. The mere fact that you have bodhicitta and you have sustained it, it's like there is no death into or no fall into sorrow, which is usually induced by self-preoccupation. Yeah, so these metaphors are true to their statement, but we need efforts to look into it, dig deep into it, and make sense. Inexhaustible treasure. It's like the treasure, inexhaustible treasure, the inexhaustible wealth that you could draw from in the service of others. When one has bodhicitta, there can not be any time when you say, when one has developed it and then really kind of strengthened it to the state of its becoming irreversible, to the point of its becoming incontrovertible. Incontrovertible in the sense that now there's no way self-preoccupation, self-obsession could ever even cause a small dent in bodhicitta. Like bodhicitta is strong. Any force that hits it can kind of get pushed back without capable of leaving even the slightest dent on bodhicitta. When one has such bodhicitta, it's almost like an inexhaustible treasure, always willing and resourceful in giving, and giving that too in the most sensible way, giving in the form that is not just merely confined to temporary reliefs, but to inexhaustible relief, into prospects of constant, lasting joy. It is the supreme medicine. I don't know how true is this. Even in Western traditions, well, even in Western cultures, you do come across mention of Phoenicia, right? Phoenicia, 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 Phoenicia. Yes, you do come across, right, expressions of that. But how true is that? Is that something that can ever happen? Exist? No, not yet. Yeah. Yeah, from a Buddhist perspective, we can make a connection. Although it needs to be experimented, tested repeatedly, and then see what the result comes to be. But we make a connection that just about all the conditions that we go through, that gives rise to feelings, that gives rise to experiences, whatnot. They are all rooted in one's mind. And the conditions, the unwanted conditions, as well as the beneficial conditions, they are all rooted in mind, depending on what kind of a mindset has been indulged in, has been invested in. So, based on that, Bodhicitta can really make a big difference in making that shift from focus on the negative mentalities to more vibrant, positive mentalities, leading to ever more progress, ever more ever more positive mental accessories being gathered, etc., etc. So, from that point of view, one can draw some parallel to the customary concept of Phoenicia. Okay. You can draw a connection to the traditional concept of Panacea. Yes. Panacea. Okay, Panacea. Okay, Panacea. Okay. So you can draw a connection to the traditional concept of Panacea. Panacea. Okay, Panacea and Bodhicitta on the other hand. Resting tree, yes. After having walked so long in scorching sun in the desert with no waters around, all of a sudden now you find an oasis. You can go there, drink and rest. Bodhicitta is like that kind of a resting place for us, individuals, for others also to benefit from. We are running, driven by our self-focus, self-interest, right? And kind of subjected to all those kinds of exhaustions and whatnot. When we land on Bodhicitta, it's like, finally, I find this cooling rays of a tree that I can rest under. In Shantideva, he says, "Deve kyongin kunseve, chanchu simji tashune, tene devan rola, simshi sushi gina gilukjur." It likens a strong, vibrant bodhicitta to a good breed of horse. What's the expression again? Yeah, a thoroughbred. Bodhicitta to a thoroughbred, right? that it is so strong and healthy. Just all you need to do is just ride on it. It gets to where you want to go, like this. In the meantime, it is you feel the ease, and at the same time, it's fast, whatnot. So likewise is the bodhicitta. When you have bodhicitta into you, you almost do not know physical exhaustion. You can keep going, at least much more than we know of. When we work, when we worry, whatnot, when we feel the pains here, the whole body begins to ache. If you look deep down, it's like, what am I going through? Somebody is making me do this. All of those is adding up to this kind of exhaustion there. If you say, this is beneficial. So happy I get to do this. Right? I'm making most of my time. And these fellow sentient beings have been so kind to me. If I could just give a little bit back to them, how wonderful. No stress, no depression, I don't know. At least none of those feelings, ache and exhaustion, you don't feel that. Physically. Mentally, of course. So he uses two terms. Dewe kyonge kuinsewe kyo ngel. Kyo ngel. He reserves one for the body and one for the mind. Both on body and mind, there is no such thing as exhaustion that you feel tiresome, tiring out. When you have bodhicitta to ride on, it's like you now have a thoroughbred to ride on, to go to where you want to go. You'll be able to go smoothly and assuredly. You reach there. Likewise, bodhicitta is that kind of a thoroughbred. I mean, we can. I mean, you may all know that. We can examine that. To kind of catch yourself, kind of getting into that self-talk, right? And then kind of say, "Come on, why am I getting into this? There's a better way of looking at it. This doesn't make sense. I better not listen to you. I'll do something else." All of a sudden, it will kind of drop the. It will drop its, what do you call it? It will drop its. Pardon? The pang that is being the grip of self-obsession would drop, and like it's sometimes you can almost feel like this. And those are very, very important experiences. Those are very important insights into what you can do and what's making you go through what you go through. Just a matter of shifting the gear. Just a matter of shifting the gear. Like, I'm in a very different place. Despite doing the same thing, I feel very different. Yeah, so he uses this expression. Dewe kyongen kuinsewe chanchu sem jita shuni. Dene devaran do wala. Semshi sushik. Yiluk yuru. If one is a thinking person, like that, he uses this. If one is a thinking person, why are you dragging your heels in training on bodhicitta? Come on, it's saying. It's almost saying, come on, give me a break. What do you have against bodhicitta? If you still claim that you are a thinking person, you are smart, why are you stepping away from it? Because that's a thoroughbred, well-groomed, strong, developed thoroughbred. As once you ride on it, every stride is a joyful. It's a joy, and it can. Dene deva rovala. Dene deva has. He repeats the dene. De means kind of smooth passage 2 times. One at the here and now, and then another in landing you to your destination. So bodhicitta is like that kind of thoroughbred. And that gives you here and now the ease, both at bodily level and the mental level. And then, yes, it can lead to much, much greater treasure. Then it never do. Same shit sushi. You look you. Yeah. Then what do we have? Yes, protective deck. Protective deck. When you think of protective deck, I get a idea. I get a image of someone. This is we quite often hear of accidents in the ocean, be that in the something to do with the cruise, with boats, etc. And people are sinking, drowning, like that. If in the midst of that there were to be a strong boat with a very wide open deck, that someone is willing to kind of pull people off and land them on the deck, how would people feel, right? It's very similar to that, with regard to oneself, with regard to others. Bodhicitta. With regard to oneself, it's because we are so unsmart. We are so unsmart in really beating ourselves up. We may have a situation, a practical situation in front of us. Nobody can deny it. But we kind of really beat ourselves up on that and make the problem so huge. So huge. And in such situation, when bodhicitta comes, that's like somebody has extended the hand to you in kind of pulling you off of self-obsession, self-preoccupation. Self-obsession, self-preoccupation in a very unsmart, unsmart. By the way, is there an expression? Is there such a word as unsmart? Okay. So, foolish, and unskillful, foolish, self-preoccupation. By the way, pursuing self-interest is nothing wrong, except if one does it. Of course, if one pursues self-interest, by default, it would have some limitations in how much where it can lead to whatnot. But nonetheless, one doesn't necessarily have to suffer from that, because one can do it in a skillful, intelligent way by knowing what leads to what, and then consciously acting on that. And that way, if we pursue even our self-interests, be that pursuing whatever worldly desires, worldly aims, whatnot, if we do so with that smartness, with that intelligence, with that understanding of what leads to what is capable of providing, what it is the limit, and what not, what is money for, in other words, and to be very clear, what is money for, what it can provide, and with that kind of a clear understanding, if one pursues money, with that kind of awareness, there's very little chance of being let down by money. Same case with wealth. There's nothing wrong, intrinsic in them, except we tend to be so confused in what it can provide with what it actually can provide, kind of collates the two, and then gets ourselves completely messed up. And then when we get them, again we are not able to stand our ground, we lose our footing under those forces, and we get swept away. It's like you accumulate money or wealth, whatever, then now you lose your footing. Now the money kind of carries you away. It's like you have no choice, no freedom where you want to go. The money is carrying it. Money is carrying it in the sense that money feeds within that state of no clarity, no clear understanding of what leads to what, how much it can provide, the limits and whatnot, etc. Then one loses sight of that. And then when one gets money, power, or whatever, that feeds those confusions, that feeds those miscalculations, whatnot. And in the meantime, one is carried away by it, without any choice, without any chance of standing one's ground. And thus, the more wealth, the more power, one's perspective is shortened. One cannot see far, one cannot see wide, deep, like that. So one is giving in to those forces, those wrong forces, blinded by the wealth that one has accumulated, about which one has a totally mistaken, miscalculated expectation and whatnot, and that's what it does. If we could be smart enough, skillful enough, though nonetheless pursuing individual pursuits in the form of these worldly goals, whatnot, if we could be clear enough in what it can provide, then yes, it can go. It can lead us somewhere. It can lead us somewhere, and then that somewhere will be, at the very least, good. Not necessarily complete good, but good. From a Buddhist perspective, we speak of that a similar concept in the case of those who are capable of pursuing individual liberation. They land themselves in individual freedom, having pursued self-interest, but skillfully, smartly, like that. Of course, it has its limitations. Given the self-interest being the driving force, it can only go so far, and you want to go even further than that, then one has to switch gear. Switch gear and use another motor that can go further. Yeah. So that's what protective deck. In one's own individual case also, bodhicitta comes as that helping hand that kind of lands one on a protective deck from the suffering. Likewise, one would at the very least have that openness, willingness, resource, etc., to be equally beneficial to others as well. Soothing moonlight. Yeah, we definitely need to hear praises upon praises of something like bodhicitta. Of course, if we if we are into hearing praises of some other things, then definitely bodhicitta we need to do that for days on end. So the next 2-3 days, all we'll be doing is hearing praises of bodhicitta. Okay, we'll be just staying with this slide, and not moving further. Okay, yeah, soothing moonlight. Yeah, in Bodhicitta, these are all from Bodhisattva, Bodhisattvacharya. Chandideva's text, Guide to Bodhisattva's Way. Rove chida jomshepe, duji chokyang deino. Rove uber sevai, misit teryang deino. Rove nerab shichepe, menji chokyang deino. All of the alternating lines end with dino, emphasizing, putting an emphasis that this is it, this is. Bodhicitta is the one that does it. Bodhicitta is the one that does it. Dro tamje ngendun le droba chepe chitegi. Drove nyumung tung sewe semjin dawa sharbai. Actually, he calls this is the mind moon. It's the moon, this is the mind moon, right? It's not the physical moon. Of course, the physical moon itself has this quality of bringing about physical relief, physical soothing experience. But this is more than that. It is a mind moon. Bodhicitta is a mind moon. Oh, how is it? That's good. Bodhicitta is mind moon. For those who are hit hard, stricken by the heat in the daytime, when they expose themselves in moonlight, and at night they feel relief. They feel that physical distress being kind of taken away. So is the case with people who are hit hard and stricken by afflictions of one kind or the other, all to a great extent rooted in one's obsession about oneself. For them, it is like when exposed to the moon of Bodhicitta, at their mind they feel relieved from the grip, from the pangs, from the tortures of these, from the beatings of these afflictions. Bodhicitta is a big sun. Is the big sun, not just this one. It's as big it is. Bodhicitta is bigger in terms of being a mind sign, mind sun. Oh, that's good. Mind sun, mind moon. It dispels sunlight in the daytime. When it comes out, it dispels as soon as it shines above the horizon and then comes further into the middle of the sky. It dispels the darkness, drives away some darkness, drives away darkness in a big way. Of course, some darknesses still get some darknesses still doesn't get affected by the sunlight. As bright as maybe, sometimes it even gets thicker and thicker and thicker. The darkness in the mind. And then even physically also. Those which are not exposed to the sun, they still retain their darkness. Bodhicitta is mind sun, in that it dispels, at least if it may not do it directly, in the case of subtle understandings of emptiness and whatnot, it leads the way. It leads the way to that. It kind of drives you to that, closer to that. Under the force of bodhicitta, it makes us take the stride to more and more intelligence, more and more understanding, and that's equal to relieving the darkness. Yes, the last one, I really like it. Butter essence from the churned milk. How many people churn milk these days to get butter? Oh, so that means saying not many people churn their mind milk to get the butter bodhicitta? Yeah, in the East. Even to this day, I have butter in my refrigerator in Atlanta that my sister has churned. Yeah, yes. She always makes sure that she has a bottle, a plastic bottle full of that waiting for me. Every time she said, take this. Yeah, she would have that refrigerated heart, and then it makes very easily through the flight, even if that is 20 some hours. It's hard, cold and hard. It's cold and hard. Somehow I haven't come across any problems with those. So I've kept bringing them. They're so tasty. Oh yeah. Not that I indulge in them, but I put little, it's like a treat, and then it brings memory of my sister, what it might have taken her into doing this, her thought of me in making this. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So, the entirety of the Buddha's teaching, if it were to be milk that you churn and churn and churn, you get bodhicitta. I have come across people in Dharamsala, other areas, who have been into bodhicitta, Buddhism for so long, and they say, well, now I'm done with bodhicitta, Buddhism. Because all it comes to is bodhicitta and emptiness. And I've got that. Now I'm moving to something else. Not that I say it up front, but quietly I said, come on. We'll make a sense of how bodhicitta is. Though bodhicitta is counted as one, it is so many in one. Not just two in one, so many in one. And it takes so long to develop it. Once it is there, it is intact there with so many of those building grounds, foundations in place. And once you have that, then that leads to even more good. And likewise is the case with understanding emptiness. It takes so many things, so many insights, so many side insights to come to an understanding of emptiness. And when you have gotten it right, then yes, the prospect and the benefit from that point onward is still continuing even more. I love this statement. This is not from Shantideva. Or maybe modern Shantideva, who knows? Not the traditional Indian master by that name. Yeah, I really like it. I need to. I have still not gotten time to dig deeper into the work of this person who made this statement. But I really like it. And by the way, he's the person who has written the book called The Dalai Lama's Cat.
Oh yeah.
Dalai Lama's Cat, right?
Yeah.
That's David Michi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dalai Lama's Cat. Have you read?
Yes.
Wow, how is it?
It's great.
Wow.
He also wrote The Queen's Corgi, but there's 2 books about the Dalai Lama's cat.
And both of them by him, or?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Now I should get that and read that on the plane when I travel long ways. Yeah, so yeah, my attention was drawn to that when I mentioned this, and somebody right away in the session looked up. So all I can get by this person is Dalai Lama's cat. Although you cannot make so much from the title of it, right? You must be kidding. He's just writing about Dalai Lama's cat. Maybe talking about how soft the Dalai Lama's cat's purr. Maybe how it how it purrs, and etc. etc. But apparently not. He's talking, yeah, Dharma. And I have heard that he's even touching on looking at things from the cat's perspective. Whoa, what could that be? Interesting. But somehow this same person has written a book on Bodhicitta and around Bodhicitta after having himself delved into Bodhicharvatara, the guide to Bodhisattva's life, for an extended period. Given his own well-pruned, well-primed, well-honed intellect, understanding, experience, etc. into things, mindfulness, bodhicitta, Buddhism, whatnot. Then when he did it, he seemed to have really gotten the butter out of it. So he makes this statement. When it comes to thinking big, it is impossible to think bigger than bodhicitta. We should organize a contest to see who can challenge this. What counts thinking big, right? What counts thinking big? What could be the biggest? No motivation is more altruistic, noble, and worthwhile. Yeah, I came across an article based on that. Yeah, basically, it was in one of the Eastern Horizon magazines. Yes, I still contribute to that section forum. I still contributed, and in return, I get the hard copy. And I really go through it because it does a very good job in really pulling in good materials and good happenings in the Buddhist world. Oh, it does. It's quite clear that they take time in really doing good research. And of course, Venerable La is a frequent contributor to that. Yeah. And then in this section called Forum, they bring up very interesting topics, some challenging ones. And they ask three people representing three different Buddhist traditions: Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, and Theravada Buddhism, and ask the same questions. We don't get to see each other's answers unless it is printed out. I rush to that section and see what they have to say. Sometimes it is amazing. It's like saying the same thing. So more often than not. Wow. And then sometimes they quote sources. You have understanding of where these are coming from. But then in some cases it's like the same thing. Yeah. By now we could pull those up and make it into a book. But I really like. And then all the other articles, be that about new books, excerpts, that's where I came across this. I kind of was wowed. Okay, what is the next? Okay, yeah. Now this is important. We can touch this and then finish. Yeah, now he makes a case. Why is it so? Because it encapsulates numerous agents of transformation within one single motivation. It may be just one single motivation, but it is a rich pack. It takes so much to get to that. And while getting there, it doesn't lose out on those bases. That's how Bodhicitta matters. And it is capable. It's powerful. Yeah. A new sense of purpose. Very often we come across people who says they don't have any sense of purpose for life, and then say that the most sensible thing to do is now to cut themselves short. Just don't see purpose. Wow, this is such a great vehicle that we have. This is such a great thing that we can have. We can achieve so much good if only we focus on others and then use it for that. It's like every step is a purpose well worth pursuing, putting it into the best use. And particularly those who go through difficult situations, as difficult as it may be, but provided they can kind of click on that, on their situation, they could even come out more forceful, more encouraged in their sense of purpose. Now that I have been through this, I know what it is like. And particularly someone who has pulled it off and come out of it. Now they have first-hand, very, very precious, valuable insight. And many are doing that. They can speak to the people who are going through these situations in no other ways that others can do. And then if one is well and hearty, hell and hearty, see? I might have been spending too much time to myself or with Tibetans. That the English expressions seem to be some things in the distance that I have some inkling, cannot really. Yeah, if one is hale and hearty, as healthy as a fiddle, but as fit as a fiddle. See, I told you. As fit as a fiddle. See, despite this, I'm not giving up. I could have easily given up. Say, okay, all these years, still I'm there. I'm give up. No, I'm not giving up. I'm rather making fun of them and use them, and then at the same time get them right. So, fit as fiddle. Then one would have even more purpose to be act out from this. Wow! And this comes only when we think of others. When we think of the connection with others, the value of others, the purpose of others, their role in our life, in each other's life, then yes. And particularly when we think of like using this for pursuing this highest goal of enlightenment, awakening. We may not call it enlightenment. It has some religious connotation. Awakening. Come on, we can do better job in kind of awakening. More than when we were. We have the capacity. Awakening to what our purpose may be, what we are capable, what our connection is, how could we turn things around. Awakening to those extent. And from that we can see how the awakening can go further and further and further. So if we have this sense of awakening, that kind of then drives us in an awakened way of engagement and whatnot. Then yes, it kind of almost infuses a sense of value, a valuable sense of purpose into our life. It kind of really uplifts us and lets us come kind of stand out from the mire of our own difficulties and relate to that in a much more sensible way. Next one, it's already time. Yeah, it's already time, 10:46. It's 10:46. We cannot push through it.